All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Good morning, everybody. Thank you all for joining us, or good afternoon, I guess. This is our first remote bidders conference for the Neighborhood Jobs Trust. So hopefully that this is a practice that we'll be able to institute and keep doing, because I think this is preferable to having everybody gather on the 9th floor. But today we'll be reviewing the requirements and priorities for the FY22 Neighborhood Jobs Trust RFP. The RFP was issued on June 30th of this year, and applications are due on August 19th by 5 p.m. The contracts for this year will have an October 1st start date, and either a 1 or a 2-year period of performance. I'm going to go through and then we can take questions at the end. Please feel free to either ask questions by unmuting yourself, raising your hand, and my co-host Katie Leisler will unmute you, or you can put your questions in the chat. This is the timeline for the RFP. As I said, it was released on June 30th, June 12th. Today is the bidders conference. Letters of intent are due on July 15th. They're not mandatory, and we do not have a prescribed format for the letters of intent. They are strongly encouraged, as they do help our staff to plan the resources for the procurement, to make sure that we have enough readers, to make sure that we have enough time. Obviously, some of that depends on how many applications we're intending to receive. So if you are planning to submit a full application, we would encourage you to submit a letter of intent, because it will help us with our planning process. Final proposals, full proposals, are due using the format in the RFP on August 19th, 2021 by 5 p.m. by emailing to njt@boston.gov. That's the only way that we're accepting. If you email to a different email address, or use some other format to upload, we may not see your application. So please be sure to follow specifically the instructions that are laid out in the RFP for submitting your application. The purpose of the funds are to fund training programs that will connect low and moderate income Boston residents to in-demand career pathways. These can include occupational skills training, ESOL, and adult basic education programs. Trainees must meet eligibility requirements. That is, they must be 18 plus, they must have a household income less than 80% of Boston's area median income. And those figures are available on our website if you want to know what the correct figure there is. And at least 25% of enrolled participant must have at least one barrier to employment. We lay these out in detail in the RFP, but these include things like homelessness or near homelessness, recovering from addiction, returning citizens, other categories of, that might mean that somebody needs additional support finding and obtaining and retaining employment. The purpose, we are open to a wide variety of occupational categories. However, given the current changing landscape of our economy, both in Greater Boston and nationally, we especially seek to fund programs offering pathways to employment in growing fields. In Boston, in particular, the professional, scientific, and technical services sector is one of the largest sectors in the Boston economy and offers pathways into many high-quality career pathway jobs. So we are particularly encouraging applications that seek to place job seekers into these sorts of roles, including healthcare, financial services, and the growing life sciences sector. Contract. All of our contracts, as many of you know, are performance-based. So when an award is made, we will award half of the amount as an upfront payment. So say a contract is awarded at the rate of $100,000 for 10 individuals. We will pay the initial $50,000 upfront, and then the remaining $50,000 will be paid in a per student placement rate. So 50,000 divided by 10, that would be $5,000 per student. You would need to submit to us proof of enrollment and completion for that student, and then proof that they had obtained training related employment and stayed in that employment for at least 30 days. Once we've received that proof, you can invoice us. And the forms for that are also on our website. You can invoice us and receive the $5,000 for that individual student. What this means also is that you're free to put a variety of items into your budget. If you feel that those goals are best accomplished by paying stipends to students, paying for wraparound services and support services, paying external consultants to help with program design or digital instruction design. All of those are allowable expenses. The only things that are not allowable expenses for the Neighborhood Jobs Trust are capital expenditures, but we generally leave it to our grantees to determine the best allocation of funds within their own budgets. So this is a new item this year. Programs will have 90 days to complete the contracting process. So we strongly encourage you to review the partner forms and the NJT handbook that are available on our website. Some of these may change before the October 1st start date. What's available now is the FY21, the Neighborhood Jobs Trust Handbook. However, reviewing the handbook will give you an idea of whether you are able to handle the administrative requirements of the grant. If more than 90 days pass and we haven't heard back from you regarding your contract, or you have significant outstanding paperwork, we may need to reconsider the grant allocation. OWD will conduct regular program monitoring to review participant eligibility. In the past, this has taken the form of office visits to review folders. With social distancing, we haven't been able to do that this year, but we do anticipate a return to in-person site visits and program monitoring during the FY22 fiscal year. As I mentioned before, our contracts will have an October 1st start date. We anticipate notifying successful applicants in mid-late September, and then the October 1st start date. So you will be able to, I know that sometimes those dates don't align exactly with your plan cycles or your plan cohorts for the year. We do tend to be fairly flexible about incorporating students. So if you have a cohort start date of September 1st and you were awarded a grant, typically we are able to include those individuals under the performance-based contracting. Here's some instructions for completing your proposal for FY22. It's very important that you complete all documents and merge them into a single PDF file. So this includes both your narrative application, your budget, and the required diversity form for the Neighborhood Jobs Trust. You can find these additional documents posted on our website under funding opportunities where the RFP is posted. I think some of you may have visited the website before the additional documents were posted and flagged for us that they were not up. Thank you for doing that. They should be up there now. If you have any questions or you're not able to access those documents, definitely let us know. As I mentioned before, there is no required format for the letter of intent. Once you have put everything into a single PDF document, email that document as an attachment to njt@boston.gov. The reason I stress these instructions is because when you do that, you upload your file to our internal file sharing system. And so if you include other attachments, such as letters of support or press clippings, they won't necessarily go together with your document. They won't look to us like they belong together. So it's really important that anything that you want to have together in one document and that you want the readers to consider is one PDF file. I'm happy to answer questions about that or provide technical assistance as we get closer. Just to review the RFP itself and some of the required program elements. Many of these are similar to what we've done in years past. However, I will say that also we are aware that many of our programs have made significant programmatic changes due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and specifically made a pivot to remote service delivery. So we do have a lot of questions that we ask about your service delivery modality, whether you're proposing a remote program or an in-person program. Some of you may also propose a hybrid program. It has been very interesting to learn from so many of our grantees over the last year that for some program participants, having some version of hybrid or remote programming has opened up new opportunities and possibilities. And so we're really interested in understanding, as you submit your application, how you're incorporating some of these new technologies into your planning and program delivery going forward. If that means that you need to include in your budget funding for digital devices or internet access, things like instructional design, please, those can be included in your budget. For all NJT program participants, it is our expectation and requirement that the program is delivered cost-free to the participant. So we don't want to see, for example, a situation where a student is able to participate in a class, but then they also need to pay, say, $500 for a laptop and internet access. We would rather see those rolled into the program costs in the upfront. So recruitment, and what does recruitment look like in a virtual age? Some of you, that may have changed significantly over the last year. For some programs, it may not. How do you conduct assessment of potential participants? Many of our programs have used tests such as the TABE test or other standard assessments. We are also asking how you're identifying and assessing the digital literacy skills of your potential program participants. So if, for example, you're proposing either a remote or fully hybrid program, we do want to know, how do you intend to assess program participants, both technical abilities and whether they have the hardware to be able to participate in the program. Our goal there is really to understand both as a whole, as a field, how are we adapting to remote and hybrid job training programs in Boston, but also how are you specifically as an organization ensuring that those who you are enrolling in your program are able to get the full benefit and participate. Case management. We have a wide variety of grant partners who employ a wide variety of case management techniques. We want to understand from you how, given the specific population you are proposing to serve, you intend to provide case management that will allow them to successfully complete the program and transition into full-time employment. For job training, we want to understand what sorts of occupational skills you are providing to individuals, what kinds of jobs they can expect to obtain when they have completed your program, and what your success rate for similar programs has been like in the past. For employer partnerships, so this is another area where we have made a change based on feedback from some employers. In the past, we always required a letter of support or a memorandum of agreement from employer partners. However, we found that those were often not necessarily connected to the proposed training program itself. We've all been in that situation of finding employer partners and getting letters of support. So what we're interested in is whatever you can provide that will actually demonstrate clear support from an employer. And our readers will be evaluating your proposals to really look at that question of how well did you demonstrate a connection with an employer and a relationship with an employer. So for some of you, that might include a letter of support or an MOA, certainly. For others of you, it may include a description of your partnership and how it's evolved over the years. We're not prescribing a certain format this year. We do want something that shows clearly a connection to an employer. Happy to take any questions about that as well. Finally, job development, job placement, and related services. How do you intend to move participants from the training that they are participating in into the job that they intend to work in when they enroll in your program? That again gets to that employer relationship question. How do you prepare them in terms of mock interviews, resume building assistance? And then finally, how do you provide support to individuals once they've been placed in a job to ensure that they're able to retain that job? As I mentioned before, NJT rules do say that you can invoice us once an individual has retained in a job for 30 days. So if you have somebody who goes through a program, graduates, and obtains employment, if they don't stay in that employment for at least 30 days, then we would not count that as a placement and you would not be able to invoice us. So job retention is definitely one of the goals of the Neighborhood Jobs Trust. Similarly, if you have an individual who goes through your training program and is placed into a job that is not related to the job training that you proposed or the curriculum that you proposed, then similarly, that is something that we would maybe deny that placement as well. Often we'll have a conversation with the program when that's the case, because sometimes there's good reason. For example, an individual maybe had childcare burdens or other things preventing them from taking a training related job. But in general, if you propose, for example, a commercial driver's license program, and then you're bringing us job placements that are driving for Uber, that's something that we would probably deny. Yeah, so in general, we want to make sure that individuals are being placed into training related employment. We will be taking questions and answers, both here during this conference and on an ongoing basis. Responses to all questions will be posted on our website by July 20th. So if you submit a question to us, we may edit it a little bit to take out some of the specifics of your organization or for clarity, but we'll put it into an FAQ document and post it on our website by July 20th. Like I said, in addition, we'll have time for a Q&A at the conclusion of this meeting. And with that, I'm just going to navigate to our website to show everybody where to find the procurement documents. This is our website, owd.boston.gov. If you go to this grant funding opportunities and click here, you'll see open RFPs, the Neighborhood Jobs Trust. You can download the RFP right here. You can download Appendix B, our budget form, and Appendix C, our diversity form right here. If you go here to partner forms, and then select Neighborhood Jobs Trust, you'll be able to download program guidelines from here, the eligibility packet, which is the packet that walks you through how to determine whether an individual is eligible for NJT funding. These are forms that we require NJT funded participants to fill out, the OWD authorization for release of information, the targeted enrollment benchmark definition. So that is related to the 25% that I spoke about. We do break down for you our neighborhood boundaries and zip code. So when you're filling out your invoice and you want to understand as a participant, like which neighborhood of Boston do we consider a participant to be from? And then the guidelines for our roster. Again, we do encourage everybody to look at these documents before applying for funding. Like many government funding sources, the Neighborhood Jobs Trust has some peculiarities that are very specific to our funding. And these are the things that will help you ensure that these funds are aligned with your program mission and vision. And that if successfully awarded a grant, you will be able to execute the contract. I'm going to go over some of the questions that I have received so far. A lot of the questions related to the letter of intent. As I said before, there is no specific format required for the letter of intent, and it is not mandatory, but we do strongly encourage it. I did have a question about the amount that we intend to grant. In the past, NJT grants have ranged from a low of about $25,000 to a high of about $125,000. I think this year we're trying to move away from some of the smaller grants and have a floor of about $35,000 or $40,000. I would anticipate that most of our grants this year, as in past years, would be in that $70,000 to $80,000 range. You will note in the RFP that we do also include this year that we encourage individuals, we encourage program designs, given the pandemic and the impact of the pandemic on communities in Boston, particularly low-income communities. We are encouraging program design that includes stipends for individuals. I understand that those kinds of program elements can dramatically increase the cost of a program delivery. We do feel this year that given the stresses that everybody has been under during the pandemic, it may be hard to recruit and retain individuals in job training programs without significant financial support and incentives. So that may increase, drive an increase in your program budget for this year. It also may be something that doesn't necessarily fit with your program model. That's something for you to decide. If you have questions about that we would be more than happy to discuss. We do look forward to receiving proposals that include stipends, and if that drives it above the price range that I just mentioned, that's also fine. I think those are the majority of the questions that I've received so far. I'm going to go ahead and look to the chat. So let's see. What verification do we need to have to document homelessness or near homelessness? There is actually covered in our program guide. For obviously documenting near homelessness is a tricky proposition, because how do you document somebody's housing instability? We do have a self-verification form for individuals. For those who may be, we have also received in the past sometimes for individuals who are shelter residents, you know, a letter from the shelter stating that they're a resident. In general, we're happy to accept self-verification for that information. Do court-involved individuals or individuals on probation count for CORI, or do they have to be formally incarcerated? Yeah, we would accept people who are impacted by CORI in a variety of ways. Those who are formally incarcerated, but also those who might have other kinds of CORI issues that they're dealing with. What type of verification do we have to provide? We do have an employer verification form that we ask the employer to sign and send back. Sometimes that can be challenging to collect. In that case, we have also gotten program participants to submit pay stubs in the past. It's fine to redact sensitive information in that case. What is the total value of available funding in FY22, and what is the application ceiling? Since linkage fees were increased, the total funding should be increased, correct? The funding for the Neighborhood Jobs Trust comes from linkage fees paid on large-scale developments in the city of Boston. These are commercial developments that are subject to Article 80 review. And yes, it is true that there was an increase in linkage passed. I'm not sure the exact date that that went into effect. However, in any given year, the amount of linkage is really dependent not on the linkage rate itself, but on the square feet of development proposed. So we do not exactly have a figure. We tend to keep it until later in the procurement cycle because our goal is to, we don't set a budget for a procurement in advance because we may have significant linkage dollars that come in, you know, close to the end of close to the closing of the procurement. So our goal will be for successful applications to spend down a lot of the money that's in the trust. So we tend to wait until closer to the decision date to understand what's the full budget for the procurement. So sorry, I don't have like a more clear answer on that, but it is just very cyclical depending on building projects being approved. Is there an average cost for participant in past grants? There is a pretty significant variety. We have had programs that are, you know, sort of highly intensive 2-year programs where an individual gets an associate's degree with a lot of wraparound support. We've had programs that are 6-week ESOL programs. So there really is a wide range. I'm hesitant to sort of put a number on it. In general, I would say that $5,500 to $6,500 per participant is probably as close to an average as I would expect. There is not a training cost cap per student. We do expect you to justify the costs that you're proposing. So a program that I should say a word about our review process. We have a panel of reviewers who are internal to the Office of Workforce Development and a panel of reviewers who are outside experts from the Office of Workforce Development. Some of you may have seen our call for proposal readers a few weeks back. We received many excellent resumes from highly qualified individuals. Those individuals are paid to participate in a training and then to read and review based on a scoring rubric that we provide. And actually the RFP provides essentially the scoring rubric and the weight for each question. So they will look closely at the cost per participant and try and understand if they think that that's justified. If a program has a high cost but offers, for example, a set of wraparound services that are really unique and compelling, or a pathway into a career that is really unique and compelling, the proposal readers may very well find that to be something that is worth funding. The proposal readers score and make recommendations to the trustees of the Neighborhood Jobs Trust, and the trustees are the ones who have the final say over which proposals are funded. In the RFP, it states programs are invited to submit full proposals. Thank you for raising that. That's actually not accurate. Everybody may submit a full proposal regardless of whether or not you're invited. So there is no requirement to submit an RFP. You are able to just move right to the full proposal stage. Some of you may remember that last year we had a procurement round where we did have a required first step of a letter of intent. We are not requiring it this time. What is the NJT position on over enrollment in early steps, such as a workshop? Yeah, I think we do have a specific cap on over enrollment. So I believe you are able to, In our invoicing system, the first step is that you submit an enrollment roster, and the second step is that you submit an invoice for students who completed and were able to obtain employment. We do allow up to 30% over enrollment. However, more than that, and we will start to, it will start to show that your program has a low completion rate. So we do have an over enrollment allowance in the initial enrollment form that programs are provided. And we do also encourage program design that might alleviate some of that. So looking at things, and Wizzy, I think you're sort of alluding to this in your question, but looking at things like bridge courses or initial workshops to help program participants evaluate whether the training they're about to embark on is something that works for them. What is the number of participants to be served per proposal? Again, we don't have a cap on that, but that's something that our proposal evaluators will look at. And really, if you're proposing a high number, we would expect that we would see in the parts of the narrative that ask about your organizational capacity, really something that would speak to your capacity to serve the number of students that you're proposing. So if a brand new organization were to come in and propose to serve 100 students, that might be something that we would look at and say, does this organization really have the capacity to do that? So be sure that you're supporting the number of students that you're intending to serve, both with labor market data that shows that there's demand for the position that you're training for, as well as organizational capacity that speaks to your ability to serve that students. Yes, in services requested. We do mention some tech training jobs. Thank you for asking that question. Again, that is not our focus for this year. You may propose in any industry that, that you see fit. Is there an anticipated date of award? Mid to late September is our anticipated final decision date. Is there a portal to submit the documents or just email the PDF? Again, when you create that PDF and you send it as an attachment, it will actually drop the document directly into our internal file sharing in a secure way. So you'll get an email back that says your file has been successfully uploaded. And there are instructions on this in the RFP, but if you don't get that email back within 24 hours, we encourage you to reach out. The deadline is on a Thursday at 5 p.m. So if you haven't within 24 hours received that email, I encourage you to reach out just to ensure that we received your proposal. Do I have guidelines around participant stipend amount based on length of program or other factors? I do not. We have a lot of programs that serve a really wide variety of constituencies. So programs that serve young adults, programs that serve specifically, single moms transitioning back into work, programs that serve, homeless veterans who are looking for work. So those costs are really going to be driven by the constituency that you're looking to serve. So we would anticipate that any budgetary costs that you outline are supported in the program narrative by just an explanation and a justification of what you're asking for. An average participant cost, I think I answered that a little bit earlier, but essentially I would say $5,500 to $6,500 per participant is average for us. We do also encourage and allow you to braid these funding sources with other OWD or state funding sources. So if that's something that you're looking to do, that's fine. On the idea of the over enrollment of early steps, it is also to make sure we don't need to cream. Does that allow you to add anything to your answer? Well, I think that really depends on the sort of occupational skills training in the program that's proposed. So we do have some programs that where it might make sense to screen participants out early. So for example, if you're doing something that has a really rigorous professional certification exam, you don't want somebody to go all the way through the program who's not going to pass the professional certification exam. So that's something that we would really leave it up to the programs to decide programmatically what works best.
Hi, Katie. Sorry,
Hi, Dana.
I just missed. It's Diana. Was it 5,500 to 6,500?
Yeah, 55 to 6,500 is roughly an average.
Okay, thank you. And that could include stipend, right? The average
yes.
cost.
Yes. As I said before, I think encouraging stipends is something that we're offering this year that's a little bit different and really is about COVID response. So I do understand if that drives costs up. above what they've been in the past. Again, we'll want to see some justification for that in some sense that will actually sort of result in more individuals being able to complete the program and get a job. So the stipend piece is a little bit different this year and a little bit new for us. I'm excited that we're going in this direction. And it might mean that we are sort of like leaving things a little bit open for with a bit of ambiguity. So I apologize for that, but introducing a new element here. So yeah. The next question is transitional employment with pre-employment training and allowable program type? Yes, absolutely. Transitional employment is an allowable program type, and we have some excellent programs that do that. The RFP lists Boston's living wages. Okay, yes, correct. The OWD site. So the RFP was posted on June 30th, 2021, and Boston's living wage was updated on July 1st, 2021, with the change of the new fiscal year. So that is an excellent point. The FY22 Boston living wage is $15.87 per hour. So we can update that. That is the figure that you should be using. Is there a minimum or maximum stipend? No, and we're not requiring that you offer a stipend. Again, I'm sure that there are some programs for whom that might not work with your program model. So that would be on you to decide. Do we submit a 1 or a 2-year budget proposal? If you are proposing a 2-year contract, we would, number one, want to make sure that it's something that there's something programmatically that calls for a 2-year program. So for example, sometimes we have a program that will follow a student through an associate's degree. That is really something that demands a 2-year program. So if it's just, you know, we want to do 8 cohorts versus 4 cohorts, that might be something that would make more sense to be in a 1-year budget. So if you have a longer term training, for example, our EMT training is 18 months. So it wouldn't really make sense for it to be a 1-year proposal because the program itself takes almost 2 years to complete. In that case, you would submit a 2-year budget and you would propose a 2-year program. What is the time frame the funds requested need to be used? So they would have an October 1st start date. For in the case of 1-year programs, they would have a September 30th, 2022, a September 30th, 2022 end date. And then all program funds would need to be expended within 100 days of the completion of that. So September 30th, 2022 plus 100 days would put us mid-January 2023. I think those are all the questions that are on here. If anybody wants to unmute and ask any additional questions, you can raise your hand.
Is it required that it be a nonprofit, or is this for profit only?
That's an excellent question. So nonprofit organizations are eligible to apply. We also have educational institutions are eligible to apply. So for example, community colleges or other kinds of educational institutions, those are our allowable applicant types. If you are a for-profit, we would encourage you to find a program to partner with for submitting.
We're like friends, but we are 501c. We are friends of the library, and we are 501c. Would we be eligible to partner with the person that's going to do the programming?
Well, you would have to identify those partners on your own and put that into your proposal. But as a 501c3 organization like Friends of the Library, you would certainly be eligible to apply on your own. That would be a nonprofit organization.
Okay, thank you.
There's a question, can we serve nonprofit employers? Absolutely. We have many nonprofit employers who are partners with some of our NJT grantees, for example, hospitals or other kinds of nonprofits. Thank you, Diana, for fielding the living wage question. Again, I really do want to emphasize again that if you're a first-time Neighborhood Jobs Trust applicant, we absolutely encourage you to review the partner manuals and the partner handbook before applying. We have had programs in the past that have submitted applications and had really great program designs. But then when it came time to look at the required paperwork that they needed to submit, they were just not able to do it. So that's obviously, you know, a tough thing to have to go through, both for the program side and for any potential participants. So we want to make sure that we're able to spend these funds as efficiently as possible. So please, please, please do review. If you are a new organization or maybe haven't had a government grant before, we do also accept fiscal sponsors. So if there's maybe a more experienced nonprofit that you might, we do have sometimes make awards to new organizations. I'm certainly not saying that we don't. But if you look at the administrative requirements and you think that you might benefit from a partnership with a fiscal agent, that is something that we can also work with you on. Not that we can suggest or provide a fiscal agent, but we're happy to work with a fiscal agent. So you will need certain things like documentation of workers' compensation insurance, documentation of general liability insurance. And if you look through and you think that you might not be able to provide those things, we would encourage you to have those in place before you apply.
Repeat that again, because that was kind of confusing. What do we need to review?
Sure. Let me just quickly share my screen again. So there is a guidebook on our website for NJ Neighborhood Jobs Trust grantees. So if you go to our website, owd.boston.gov, and then look at this partner forms tab, partner forms, then you can scroll down and you can see all the different grants that we have. So if you select Neighborhood Jobs Trust, read this program guideline document. That will give you a sense of the administrative requirements of the Neighborhood Jobs Trust before you apply. Because this is an FY20, FY21 program guideline document, it may change before October. So I'm not promising that it will be 100% the same, but it will be largely the same. So if you look through this and you think that there's certain documentation that you're not going to be able to provide, then it's worth getting those documents in place before you submit your application. As I said before, we are going to add a time limit this year. So programs will have 90 days to provide their documentation. This will allow us, again, to make sure that the money is out in the field doing the work that it's intended to do, and not kind of awaiting allocation. Does that answer your question, Ms. Weidman?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
I just needed to know because it's true.
Well, and we're here to answer any questions. And I'm happy to work with people through it, but I think it's just always worth, because some people might take a look and say, this is not a good fit for my organization. So we want to encourage you to take a look before you do.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Is there a job development to private industry requirement? There is a requirement that you demonstrate that you have a partnership with an employer who's provided some sort of input into your program. So whether they're providing direct job placements, that is up to you. And it does not have to be private industry. We definitely have programs that we've funded programs in the past that do placement into, public childcare facilities or placement into other kinds of public sector roles. That's certainly something that we're very happy to see. It doesn't have to be a private, but you do have to demonstrate an employer relationship, and you do have to demonstrate that the kinds of trainings that you are offering are in demand. Our really key question is, if somebody attends the training that your program is offering, are they likely to get a job? And is that job likely to be a career pathway job, offering good wages and benefits and opportunities for advancement? That's really the key criteria that we're examining and that our readers will be asking themselves as they review your proposal. Do you need to be a vendor of the City of Boston? You don't need to be a vendor of the City of Boston in order to apply. However, if you're awarded a grant, you will need to fill out the forms to become a vendor of the City of Boston. That paperwork is pretty straightforward, and we'll walk you through all of that. Yeah, it's just really like two pieces of paperwork to fill out. Will this recording be available? Yes, we will make this recording available on our website when we're finished here today. Do enrollees have to be all people our organization serves, or can they be a select group? For example, if we do a cohort model for some people, we serve but not all. Yeah, that is an excellent question. Which is Sarah, that's a great question. In fact, we really are looking for specific individual people who you're going to be serving. We anticipate that for any organization, some of the individuals that you'll serve will be NJT eligible and some won't be. And so this funding is to really track particular individual Boston residents who are eligible for NJT funding using the criteria that are laid out in the RFP. So if you're awarded a grant, we will provide you, after you complete your contract, with an enrollment roster that you have to fill out that identifies the specific individuals who are being funded through this funding source. So not only do we encourage you to have a cohort model, I think that the way that this is structured almost not demands it, but it would be hard to see how you might how it might work otherwise, because you would have to sort of ensure that every single one of your program participants is NJT eligible, which seems like it would be more burdensome than necessary. So I don't know if that answers your question. I hope it does. So. Are you considering early childhood for job placement with EEC certification? Yes, absolutely. That's something that we have funded in the past, and we would be happy to see an application on that. Certainly the huge shortage of qualified individuals for childcare is an issue for many families across the city right now. It's been a priority for Mayor Janey. So we would be, I think that that's something that we would be happy to see. Would we cover childcare stipends or transportation? Yes, those are allowable expenses for wraparound services for students. Absolutely. Other questions?
In the letter of intent that's coming up on the 15th, does it specifically say exactly what we just, it's just a letter of intent that we intend to put a proposal in. Do we have to give you a framework of it?
No, it really just helps us for planning purposes. So the best thing is just including that you intend to apply. You don't need to include other details beyond that. The name of your organization, of course. So no, a summary of the number, the purpose, and the program, that would be excellent. Yes, that would be ideal. If this question is too specific, I can ask a colleague. If a participant receives DTA support, will receiving a stipend cause any issues with that? I would definitely encourage you to check with your colleague on the program side, because I don't feel that I have enough information about different kinds of DTA program requirements to answer that. However, I would anticipate that that would be a significant consideration. Part of why we're not requiring stipends or really setting minimums, or, in some cases it might make more sense to, as somebody mentioned, pay directly childcare subsidies or pay transportation subsidies rather than making a cash payment directly to the individual, because of those like cliff effect type questions. So we would definitely encourage you to, if you're going to propose a stipend design, propose one that you believe will overall be a benefit to your participants and not put them in a difficult situation. And unfortunately, the way our public benefit system is structured, sometimes that can be a harder question to answer than it really should be. So I wish I could provide more guidance, but I'm worried about saying the wrong thing, because those kinds of laws are so complicated. So
is the stipends that we are offering to them, is that income for them, which will be taxable later on?
Again, that's something that you would have to understand and decide on your own. I would imagine that that would depend on what you require in return for the stipend, how much the stipend is, the things like that. So I can't really answer that without, knowing exactly what it is you're proposing to proposing what you're proposing. So yeah. But thank you, Kate, for raising that question, because I think a lot of people will probably, have that exact same. But we do have a few more minutes leading up in case anybody joins us late and wants a quick run through. If anybody has any questions, feel free to, you can email them and we will put them on the Q&A and post that on our website next week. But otherwise, I don't intend to provide any other information. Our questions due on the 20th or the 22nd. I believe we want them on the 20, I'd have to double check. I believe we want them on the 22nd, so we may have a little bit more time. That's next Thursday, yeah. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and leave this up, but otherwise, if you don't have questions, yeah, you can feel free to log off and have 12 minutes of your day back. Oh, can
Great.
internship.
Thank you.
Bye. Can internship be part of the training? Yes, absolutely. Internship is absolutely allowed. And we have many successful programs that use that model.